All right, so imagine this, right? You're cruising down the highway in Texas, just minding your own business when, bam, lights in the rear view. You get pulled over. Okay, not ideal, but it happens. But here's where it gets weird. They don't just hand you a ticket and send you on your way. They start taking your stuff. Your car, cash you have on you, maybe even, and this is wild, your house.
It's crazy, right?
Yeah.
You'd think they caught you with a truckload of something illegal. But get this, they don't even have to charge you with a crime for this to go down.
Hold up, what? You can have your stuff taken even if you're not charged with a crime? How does that even...
It's called Civil Asset Forfeiture.
Oh.
And yeah, it's pretty wild.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, the government can seize your property if they even just suspect it's connected to a crime.
It's a suspect. So, like, how strong does that suspicion have to be? Are we talking beyond a reasonable doubt here?
Yeah.
Or...
Not even close. The standard for seizing your stuff is something called probable cause. And highway robbery, that Texas Watchdog article we're looking at today, they call it out as basically the most elastic legal standard there is.
Elastic, huh? So that doesn't sound promising.
Not really. I mean, think about it. It's on you to prove your innocence to get your own stuff back.
That seems kind of backwards, doesn't it? Shouldn't it be on them to prove you did something wrong?
Logically, you'd think so. But that's not how this works. And get this. Across the U.S., 80% of these civil asset forfeiture cases, they don't even end up with criminal charges.
Wait, 80%? So most of the time they're taking stuff from people who haven't even been charged with a crime.
Yep. Wild, right? And the article gives this example of Elizabeth Young, this grandmother in Texas.
Okay, what happened to her?
Her son, he lived with her, got arrested for, get this, selling a little bit of pot. We're not talking bales here. But the authorities, they swooped in and took her house.
Her house? Come on, that's rough. They went after her property for something her son did.
Yep, and her car too. And that's where this legal term in rem comes into play.
Oh.
It basically means they're suing the property, not the actual owner.
So instead of like arresting a person, they arrest their, I don't know, their TV.
Pretty much. And that's how they can get away with taking grandma's house when it's her son who is allegedly selling weed.
Man, that's just, I don't know, it feels wrong. This whole thing, it just seems less about fighting crime and more about...
Well, let's follow the money, shall we? Because in Texas, when law enforcement seizes your assets like this, they can keep up to 100% of the profits.
Wait, they get to keep all of it?
That's a lot, right? And the article talks about how this creates a dangerous incentive, especially for smaller towns and counties. For them, this money, it's a huge chunk of their budget.
Yeah, I can see that. If you're a small town hurting for cash, suddenly you've got this revenue stream from seizures. That's tempting.
It's a huge conflict of interest. The article even mentions Reeves County back in 2012. They made a killing off forfeitures. We're talking 15 times what their prosecutor's budget was.
15 times? No way. That's insane.
Yeah, makes you think, doesn't it? Where are the priorities here?
So this whole thing is pretty messed up, but I'm guessing people are trying to do something about it, right?
Oh, absolutely. There have been attempts to rein this whole civil asset forfeiture thing in. Like the article mentions this House Bill 3659 from 2023 that was trying to change things.
Really? Okay. What would that have done? Did it go anywhere?
So the big thing was making it harder for law enforcement to just take your stuff without a conviction.
You mean actually having to prove someone's guilty of a crime first? What a concept.
Right. Radical, I know. But it got stalled. You see, these law enforcement lobbies, they push back hard. They say civil asset forfeiture is crucial, that it helps them go after big-time criminals and drug traffickers.
I get that. But like we were talking about earlier, it seems like a lot of these seizures, they're not hitting kingpins. It's regular people getting caught up in this.
Exactly. And it gets worse. The article even points out how this practice really seems to disproportionately impact people of color and those in low-income communities.
Now, come on, that's just not right. How so?
Well, they talk about Harris County in the article. They seize tons of vehicles every year, hundreds of them. And a lot of the people they're targeting, Black and Latino drivers.
Man, and I bet if you're already struggling to make ends meet, having your car taken away, even a little bit of cash, that could be devastating.
Oh, absolutely. It's like a double whammy, you know.
Yeah.
Not only are you more likely to be targeted in the first place, but then you probably don't have the money to hire a lawyer to fight back. The article even calls the whole process of trying to get your property back this Kafkaesque nightmare.
Kafkaesque nightmare? What's that? Like a bureaucratic maze with a side of existential dread?
Pretty much. Mountains of paperwork, these crazy short deadlines, and just this feeling that the system is rigged against you from the start.
Okay, so let's say hypothetically, of course, I'm innocent and they've taken my car. What do I even do? How do I get it back?
Well, first things first, you got to move fast. We're talking days, maybe even less, to file a claim. And here's the kicker. Unlike in a criminal case, you don't automatically get a lawyer.
Wait, you're kidding. They can take your stuff, but you're not guaranteed a lawyer to help you get it back. Come on, that doesn't seem right.
It's a system that definitely seems to favor the government over the individual. And even if you manage to navigate all the legal stuff, you're still on the hook for proving your innocence.
But I thought we already covered that. They take your stuff, you got to prove you didn't do anything wrong.
Right, but it gets even more complicated. Remember how we talked about probable cause being a pretty low bar? Well, the standard of proof to get your property back is also lower than in a criminal trial. The state, they just have to show it's more likely than not that your stuff was connected to some illegal activity.
More likely than not. Okay, English, please. What does that even mean?
So, it's a step down from beyond a reasonable doubt. That's the gold standard for criminal convictions. More likely than not basically means the government just has to make a slightly more convincing case than you.
So we're talking like a 51% to 49% kind of thing. That doesn't exactly scream justice to me. So let me get this straight. They don't have to, actually prove I did something wrong, just that it's more likely than not that my stuff was, involved somehow. That's a pretty low bar, especially when they're the ones taking something from me.
Yeah, it definitely highlights the power imbalance here, right? You've got the government with all their resources and lawyers, and then you're just trying to get your own property back. And that's why this whole civil asset forfeiture thing is so controversial. It's ripe for abuse.
Totally. It's like the deck is stacked against you from the start. So what can people even do? I mean, is there any hope of changing this system?
There are groups out there fighting for reform, like the Institute for Justice and the ACLU. They're pushing for some pretty common sense changes.
Like what?
Well, requiring a criminal conviction before they can take your stuff seems like a good start, right? And raising that standard of proof so it's not just more likely than not. Maybe even putting limits on how much law enforcement can actually profit from these seizures.
Yeah, those actually sound like good ideas. But those law enforcement groups, they're probably not going to like that too much, are they?
It's a tough battle. They argue these powers are vital for public safety, going after drug lords and organized crime, that kind of thing. But the critics, they say the system's catching too many innocent people in the net, and that it disproportionately impacts those who can least afford to fight back.
So it's like, do the ends justify the means? Is it okay to maybe snag a few innocent people if it means catching the bad guys? Tough question.
It really gets to the heart of the issue. We're not just talking about legal technicalities here, right? It's about justice, fairness, that balance of power between the government and the individual. Pretty deep stuff when you think about it.
For sure. So we've covered a lot of ground here on civil asset forfeiture, but for our listeners who are just joining us, what's the big takeaway? What should they remember about all of this?
I think the biggest thing is awareness. Understand that in Texas right now, your property can be taken and you don't even have to be charged with the crime. And if that happens, it's on you to get it back. It's not easy.
Yeah, knowledge is power, right? The more you know about your rights, the better prepared you are to protect yourself.
Absolutely. Yeah. And if this does happen to you, talk to a lawyer ASAP. Don't try to go it alone.
Definitely not. But beyond just protecting yourself, what can people do if they want to see this system actually change?
Stay informed, get involved, and make some noise. Support those organizations fighting for reform. Talk to your elected officials. Let them know this is an issue you care about.
Because at the end of the day, the law, it should reflect our values. Right?
Exactly. If enough people speak up and say, hey, this isn't right, then maybe, just maybe, things can change.
Well said. This has been a real eye-opener, I gotta say. Civil asset forfeiture, not something I want to experience firsthand, so thanks for breaking it all down for us.
Glad to be here. These conversations are so important.
They really are. And to all our listeners, if you want to learn more about this, definitely check out that highway robbery article from Texas Watchdog. We'll link it up in the show notes. Until next time, stay curious, everybody.